Alright, Brent Torsia, TopVelocity.net. We're going to do a pitch analysis here of Mitchell. We're going to pair him up with one of my favorite Japanese pitchers, Asao. You know, Asao here is he's not a big guy. He's around, I think, 5'9", 5'10", 150 pounds, 45, 150 pounds. So, but he moves his frame very quickly and efficiently, so very athletic, and a great example of good mechanics. Now, Mitchell looks a little bit bigger, obviously, than Asao, but similar proportions in the build here, so I thought it would help. It's going to give you a good idea where, someone at your build, a high velocity pitcher, your build, how he's moving, and we want to try to compare yourself to that, just so you can see the differences, and it will give you an idea of where you potentially could be. Okay. All right. So let's take Mitchell here into his leg lift. Take Asao here into his leg lift. Okay, a little difference on the lift. Asao here is tucking into the lift. Mitchell's kicking. Whatever you do, you just want to make sure that you don't throw your weight away from the target here. 3x pitching, we really believe in the linear move, meaning even if you come up and you're rotational, you're still focusing on shifting your momentum forward, and the rotational move shouldn't take away from that. So the rotational move, if as you lift, you're letting the lift leg pull back, or you're rotating it back, it's just allowing the lift leg to get some distances from the front hip as you're moving forward, which is going to give you more time to build speed down the mound before your lift leg breaks and gets in front, or gets out front. You can see here, Mitchell, you're lifting up and kicking up. A little bit of a forward move, but you can see how you're actually waiting for that lift leg to come back from its kick to start moving. So now you got your lift leg knee moving faster than your front hip, which means it's going to get out early. So there's your lift leg knee breaking your front hip. I pick this moment in the delivery because this is when the lift leg is at the point where it wants to open and put down. Now you're doing a good job of staying closed through your front leg. You're really closing that foot in. So if you are going to, whenever that foot gets out, it needs to be closed. Specifically, and not, as long as this force vector here, which is our ankle to knee, as long as this is pointing vertical, this lift leg better be closed. It's better that it's not even out like this. But say you were pitching from a slide step, you would be out lift leg knee past the front hip pretty quickly, and this would be the position you need to be in. You need to be closed. So, I'm going to show you where Asao is at the point of his lift leg knee breaking his front hip, and he's coming from the same lift leg as you. So just give me an indication of how much more distances he's covering earlier in his delivery, which means he's moving faster than you. But ultimately, you still can make up for it, and we'll see how well you make up for it. So here's Asao. He likes to move into extension, following his lift leg, just so he can, that gives him more time to build momentum down the mound before his lift leg knee breaks his front hip. But notice, as he's moving down, as he's moving forward and down at the same rate, we don't see him just flexing down. We see him moving forward and down at the same rate, not just, I'm talking about those hips. We can see that force vector is a good indication of him moving forward and down. We see the force vector moving with the front hip. We see him getting some flexion through the drive leg, and then when the lift leg knee breaks the front hip, so this is you and him in the same position, he's still closed on the front side just like you, but notice how much more distance he's covered. So initially, who came out of the gate a little bit more aggressively, a little bit a lot more with a lot more momentum? Who's doing a better job of accelerating that momentum? Definitely Asao here. So we can see there's that force vector pointing to that front hip. Here's that lift leg knee breaking the front hip, and here's that closed front foot keeping that front side from opening. Now if we compare that to you, we see your force vector is almost completely vertical. You are closed on your front foot. This is when your front leg knee breaks your front hip. But notice how you are still over that rubber. Also notice how Asao's arms are actually farther down than you. You are actually already starting your arm movement. So you're moving, you're starting to cock or move up into that cock position, and you barely have moved off the rubber. So potentially you've put yourself in a position where your arms look like they're going to get going early, which is going to affect hip to shoulder separation. And most importantly, your legs have yet to really start to work and build your speed and power. So let's see what you're able to do. Of course, at this point, you're just going to have to continue to reach out with the front side while you position your backside down. Now, the reason we have to get that force vector in that linear position is because we're not vertical athletes. We're not jumpers. We're more like sprinters. We're building speeds in a linear direction towards the target. So we can't build force, power, speed, anything into that ball without putting some force in the ground towards our target. So there's no better way to do that with a linear force vector, meaning taking that knee down just like a sprinter would before he starts a race. So when you do want to burst your speeds or enhance that force production, it's going to move into your hips specifically. That's why in that linear direction your force vector is pointing to that back hip. So when we do build force through the ground, it's going to push that hip through, and that's going to help us start hip rotation early, which tends to lead to more hip to shoulder separation. So let's just see what you do up to before front foot strike. So you can see you start to reach out, but here you go. You're starting to open up. You're opening up before your drive leg is in position, before your force vector is in position. That's going to be a problem, because when you start to open your front side, you start to rotate your hips. So you can see next frame, you open up your front side completely. You move into extension, which actually would be the right timing here. So here's a lesson that Mitchell's timing the movement of the feet, meaning the opening of the front side and then the powering of the back side, but he's not in a good position to support this movement. So it's good timing, just bad positioning. So he opens the front foot, he extends the drive leg, he kicks the drive leg through, hits front foot, lands, stabilizes there, and then the hips open. So that the timing showed to really have an effect on the hips, and that's really the key here. Is when we do open the front side and trigger hip rotation, we have to power the backside. So your timing being on, it had a great effect on your hip rotation. But as far as it being explosive, as far as that linear power moving into your hips or creating an explosive hip rotation, I'm not sure if it was there. It doesn't look like, even though you have some decent hip to shoulder separation, I'm not sure if this converted into some good core torque, which is going to then create some good trunk rotation, which is common characteristics of high velocity pitchers. So here's you hitting your front side and your hips open, and that looks great, and that was because you timed that movement really well. But I don't know if you got enough force behind it. I mean, if I did a rough evaluation of hip to shoulder separation, I try to take a bird's eye view. I draw the top of your head. This would be the top of your head. I draw a line from left hip through right hip. Then I draw a line from left shoulder to right shoulder. So it looks like shoulder-wise, if I follow your shoulders, that's your shoulders. It looks like your arm is pulled back away from that shoulder, but I'm more interested in your shoulders, because I don't want to see too much what's called a horizontal abduction when the elbow goes behind the back, because it can be pretty hard on your arm. So just looking at your hip shoulder separation based on your shoulders and hips, you're maybe 35 degrees. You're close to that 40 degree mark. But is that enough for you? I usually say that just because I found information that the MPA discovered that the average Major League pitcher gets 40 to 60 degrees of separation. It looks like Mitchell is close. I would say he's close to 40. I'd say probably not shoulder to hips at 40, which is more important than just having horizontal abduction or the arm behind your back to create that hip to shoulder separation. But I'd say you're close to 40, but is that enough for you? Because you're like a Sal, you're this lean, limber guy, you're probably going to be a more 55, 60 degree guy. If the average major league pitcher is 40 to 60 degrees, you could have a pitcher 40 degrees throwing 90 and a pitcher 60 degrees throwing 90. Excuse me. So, just my experience would say your hip to shoulder separation to be close to that 90 mile an hour mark is going to have to be more towards the most that the average pitcher, major league pitcher, is going to get, which is around 60. Which, if I paired you up to someone like Trevor Bauer, even here like a Sal, you're going to see they're more, even more separated. But using some separation timing, measuring your margin of separation timing will give us also something else. And you can see it here. It's obviously telling us what's going on. So here, to measure hip separation timing, we want to take when our hips peak. Here's our hips peaking, or hip rotation peaking. Now, when is our shoulder rotation peak? Right the next frame. So you can see there's a very small margin of hip to shoulder separation, which tells me that there's not enough core torque here. So you did great of timing your lower half movements, and I think as you learn to build more force through your drive leg, that timing's still going to be there. You've done that. You've learned that really well. But you're still going to have to learn to position yourself and build that force and learn how to that force enhances hip to shoulder separation. That's something we do really focus on a lot in the 3x Pitching Velocity program is trying to take as much force in the front foot through our stride, and then seeing how much hip to shoulder separation it will create. So, and then how to then deliver off that hip to shoulder separation. So you can see next frame, your arm is moving into optimal external rotation, but it's really not much at all. So let's take a Sal through this. Let's put you back in hip to shoulder separation. So watch this out. He's in that great position, and he's going to time it well. He's going to open his front side. He's going to extend his back side at the same time, or just following. He's going to hit front foot with full triple extension before front foot. He's going to lock up the front leg, stabilize the hips, and there he is. So look at the difference here. This will just give you good indication. This is why I picked you two guys. Let's just look at the difference. Look at the abduction of the drive leg. Definitely a longer stride here. He's got even more a linear front force vector. Okay, so we see a longer stride. So that means it tells you that force vector was a lot more linear before he went into triple extension. You can see he's got a little bit lower center of gravity. If we did a rough estimate of a Sal's hip to shoulder separation, this would be his head, this would be his hips. Okay, and then here would be his shoulders. So you can see definitely he's more that 60 degree, and ultimately, Mitchell, you're in that same boat. This is just close, but not enough. We can see here your shoulder, your right shoulder isn't as far back, but it's close. I mean, it almost looks identical except in the stride lengths. We can see Sal is definitely have a longer stride, which also correlates to pitching velocity. So not as much there. Let's see, Sal moves into, look when he goes into external rotation. So that right there is our key comparison between the two. We know a Sal is generated more trunk speeds than Mitchell. It's obvious here that it also came through a stride, because we can see more front leg extension and more forward trunk tilt. That means more force hit the front leg, and he locked the front leg up pretty hard to convert that force. And then the last thing is the optimal external rotation. So we don't see as much force into the front leg of Mitchell here. We see a more bent front leg, less forward trunk tilt, less external rotation. So this right here tells me that hip to shoulder separation was just not enough. There wasn't enough force there. You're limber enough, you timed your movements enough to create some separation, which was good. We just now have to put some force behind it. So it's kind of like you're pulling this long and lanky rubber band back, but because it's lanky, you're not pulling it far enough back. So that's the one thing about being limber. When you're limber, you got to hit full range of motion. You look at someone like Tim Lincecum, you look at someone like Trevor Bauer, you look at someone who's really limber and lean, and they get the most torque or range of motion in the game. or range of motion is a better way to pull it. When they separate, they look like contortionists, like they're twisting around their spine. When they get external rotation, it looks like their arm is touching their butt. Because there's less tension in that frame, so you have to get more range of motion. But then if you look someone like, Jose Fernandez for the Marlins, Feliz, if he's still with the Rangers, look at the thicker guys. You don't see that range of motion because they've got more tension in their frame. They don't have to pull it back as far. So we can see with Mitchell is got some of the basics down. Some of the good movements here, but the force isn't there. A lot of Mitchell's initial problem was the initial move, and then the ability to generate more force in the front foot, and then feel that hip to shoulder separation, and then that explosive trunk rotation, creating this optimal external rotation. So let's see where you finish. So you see your elbow continues to kind of get out in front of your face. You get late internal rotation. You finish very vertical. You can see Sal stays extended on the front leg, get a little bit earlier internal rotation. Notice when he internally rotates, his elbow stays up. Notice when you internally rotate, your elbow shoots down. So he's got earlier internal rotation, indication the arm is moving faster. Look at that crazy front leg extension. So look how vertical you are at this point. Look how extended he is with some forward trunk tilt, early internal rotation. So we can just see that you didn't coil up enough. We didn't put enough force in the front foot to coil up the torque into hip shoulder separation to then explode the trunk into forward trunk tilt as we stand strong and stabilize the front leg extension. So it's just really with you, Mitchell, is really enhancing your delivery, building more power production through your delivery, converting it into torque and getting it into the ball. And that's what the 3X pitching program is. That's what we do. With the throwing programs, that's the focus of the throwing programs, and at the same time, that's the focus of the strength conditioning program, so we can move our frames more explosively. If you're big or small, it doesn't matter. You got to be able to move your frame, and of course, the smaller you are, the faster you have to move it. The bigger you are, you don't have to move it as fast, but you still got to be able to move it. Okay, so that's what we're training in the strength conditioning program. That's working together with the throwing program to build the high velocity pitcher. So I know this is kind of a long-winded analysis, but I hope this helps, Mitchell. I think usually longer analysis are guys that have a lot of good things going, but they're just kind of missing the boat, so I have to fill in the details. And when you got to fill in the details, it usually takes more time. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions, let me know. I look forward to working with you through the programs. If you can make it down for a camp, that would be great. That's the way I recommend those guys who are serious to take it to the next level to come into it if you can. If not, I understand, and I can work with you a lot online as well. So whatever you need, I'm here to help, and looking forward to working with you, like I said.